So we have seen this battle a number of times. The best of Android, Samsung's S series, going up against the latest iPhone that Apple has to offer. This time we have the same two companies, but the battleground is different. This is the iPhone SE 2020 versus the Samsung Galaxy S10 Lite. So which one of these two phones should you be picking up? We answer that in today's video. Hey guys, Amar here from C4eTech, and if you do find this video useful, then please consider subscribing and turning on notifications by hitting that bell icon. Let's now get started. Before we jump in, I'd like to point out one thing. This comparison isn't just about the raw specs. It's based more from the point of view of an average consumer who doesn't really care about the resolution or the megapixels. They just want a solid experience from their phone. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's dive into today's video. Beginning with the build, well, it's clear from the very onset that these two phones were made for two very different audiences. On one hand, we have the S10 Lite with its tall profile, a glass stick build, and a big screen up front. This is a phone for people who love large screens and don't mind holding their phones with two hands. Compared to that, the iPhone looks comically tiny, but pick it up and it's almost 40 grams lighter. The slim profile fits ever so easily inside our pockets and into our palms, and then we start to realize why people love this form factor so much. In fact, the iPhone SE 2020 exists so that it can provide an upgrade path to the people who are still on an iPhone 5, 5S, the original SE, or even something like the iPhone 7 or 8. The SE 2020 frame is the same as the iPhone 8 from 2017. And while the chunky bezels and big Touch ID sensor to the front won't win any design awards in 2020, it's familiar to a lot of people who are looking to upgrade from an older, smaller iPhone to this. Not just that, the new iPhone SE also comes with Ip67 water and dust resistance, something the S10 Lite lacks. Now we have always left design up to personal preference, but never has it been as radical as this before. So, do tell us in the comments which one of these two designs do you prefer, the petite glass-covered iPhone SE 2020 or the larger, more modern design of the S10 Lite. Turning around to the displays, well, there's no competition here. The S10 Lite has a 6.7-inch Super AMOLED panel that absolutely dwarfs the 4.7-inch IPS panel on the iPhone. It's better in almost every aspect. It's brighter, more contrasty, has vivid colors, and is of course sharper, being a Full HD Plus panel. So on paper, this is an easy win for Samsung. But the smaller Retina panel on the iPhone is good enough for most use cases, and for people who want to use their phone one-handed, the iPhone is easily the better choice. So while from a technical standpoint, this round goes to the S10 Lite, I can still see some people preferring the iPhone. Like, when was the last time that you could reach all corners of a smartphone display with your thumb? So yeah, the usability is one aspect that can't be ignored here. Coming round to the performance, we have the 7nm A13 Bionic that absolutely crushes the Snapdragon 855 when it comes to benchmark scores. This is the same flagship chip from Apple that we find in their latest iPhone 11 and 11 Pros, phones that cost almost double the iPhone SE 2020. So it's no wonder that now that it's got fewer pixels to push on the SE 2020, the A13 delivers one of the best performances that we can expect from a smartphone. That being said, the Snapdragon 855 is still a pretty powerful chip. The 2019 flagship processor still packs a punch, and paired with One UI 2.0 on the S10 Lite, the performance here is nothing to scoff at. Both these phones have no problems dealing with any day-to-day tasks that we throw at them. Everything from multitasking to app opening times was blazing fast. So from a casual use case perspective, it's difficult to tell these two apart. Now when it comes to intensive games, the A13 shows its graphical chops, and the experience here, even at the highest settings, is buttery smooth. The Adreno 640 is not far behind either. So in my mind, the difference comes down to the screen real estate. Playing PUBG on a 4.7-inch HD screen can feel a bit cramped, and it can be hard to spot enemies. I'd rather have the larger AMOLED panel for my gaming needs. Now, modern mobile games are getting pretty large, so the Galaxy S10 Lite has an advantage here, with the base variant offering 128 gigs compared to 64 on the iPhone SE. We can get a 256 GB version of the iPhone, while the S10 Lite offers a whopping 512 GB. That's half a terabyte of internal storage. We also have micro SD card expansion available through the hybrid SIM slot. No such option on the iPhone though. Now we aren't really comparing RAM sizes here. That's because iOS and Android, they're fundamentally different when it comes to RAM usage as well as multitasking. So the performance crown, it goes to the iPhone SE 2020. But when it comes to real life usage and gaming, I prefer the S10 Lite a tiny bit more. Moving on from the hardware to the software, we have One UI 2.1 based on Android 10 on the S10 Lite, while the iPhone is running on the latest iOS 13 release. Now we have come a long way from the laggy TouchWiz days, while iOS, well, except for a few changes here and there, it's kind of remained the same. To be fair, iOS still does feel a lot more consistent. There's no frame drop during animations or random bits of micro stutter in there. That being said, One UI 2.1 isn't too far off either, and since it is based on Android 10, the customization options here are a lot more. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole iOS versus Android debate, but during my time with the iPhone SE, I did feel like Apple could at least give us the option of a gesture-based navigation in here. Yes, I know Touch ID and the home button is present, but always reaching to the top for the back button began to feel tedious after a while. Anyway, we have two mature mobile operating systems here, each with their own sets of pros and cons. So I'll leave this one up to you guys. Personally, I have always been an Android fan, and One UI 2.1 ranks among one of my favorite Android skins out there. Moving on then to battery life, honestly, this is where Apple really dropped the ball. I can live with the old design, the 720p screen, and heck, even the single camera. More on that later. But the 1820 mAh battery in here could very well be a deal breaker. Even with light usage, it barely lasted me through half a day. I had to keep topping it up throughout the day, so thank God for wireless charging. And the fact that Apple can still sell phones in 2020 with a 5-watt included charger is just baffling to me. Yes, there's support for 18-watt fast charging and it can charge the battery up to 50% in half an hour, but it really pales in comparison to the 45-watt fast charging that the S10 Lite supports. Inside the box of the S10 Lite, we have a 25-watt fast charger, and even that can charge the much bigger 4000 mAh battery to just under 60% in half an hour. The only downside to the S10 Lite being that the composite back doesn't allow for wireless charging. So this is the S10 Lite all the way. Taking a stock of the sundries next, let's first compare fingerprint scanners. Touch ID is fast and consistent. The under-display fingerprint scanner on the S10 Lite, while better than previous Gen 1s, isn't up to the same level as Touch ID. We do have Face Unlock on the S10 Lite though, something the iPhone lacks. When it comes to the quality of loudspeakers, I feel both of them can get pretty loud, but I prefer the richer output from the stereo setup on the iPhone SE 2020. As we mentioned before, the iPhone SE 2020 comes with the Ip67 rating. The S10 Lite offers no such protection against the elements. What it does come with though is a hybrid dual SIM slot. The iPhone does offer dual SIM functionality, but through an eSIM. Now, in the future, this may become the norm, but as of today, having a physical SIM slot makes for an easier setup process. Anyway, coming now to the cameras, we have the S10 Lite with triple rear cameras, while the iPhone relies on a single 12 megapixel snapper, and the power of the A13 Bionic, of course. Taking a look at the photos side by side, the first thing that jumps out is how the colors on the Samsung pop a lot more, whereas they're more true to life on the iPhone. Of course, if we are to pixel peep, the 48 megapixel camera on the S10 Lite does end up taking sharper pictures. When it comes to low light, the S10 Lite has the obvious advantage with a dedicated night mode as well as optical image stabilization. The night shots look way better, we have more details and lesser noise levels. The colors also look better on the S10 Lite. So that's the end of the story, right? The S10 Lite does end up taking better still images than the iPhone SE 2020. And Samsung also includes an ultra-wide as well as a dedicated macro sensor to the back. Well, it's not quite as simple as that. Apple has done a great job with how responsive the camera is. That means the focus here is super sharp, and most times, even if you don't tap to focus, shots come out looking great. That's not something we can say about the S10 Lite. Also, when it comes to rear portraits, the edge detection is on par on both phones, but the iPhone does tend to do a better job capturing the details of the subject. Of course, when it's selfies, a 7 megapixel camera on the iPhone can't really compete with a 32 megapixel snapper on the Samsung in terms of details, but the skin tones look way more natural on the iPhone. Even the background seems to be better exposed here. Moving on to videos, we have 4K 60 FPS capture. This is where the iPhone really shines. We can see the dynamic range of the iPhone come into play, the footage from the SE 2020 looks a lot brighter, and the details don't look as over-sharpened as with the S10 Lite. That being said, footage from the S10 Lite is more stable, but overall I have to give videography to the iPhone SE 2020. So, if you want a phone that nails almost every shot it takes and has really great video capture, then the single shooter on the iPhone SE 2020 won't disappoint. However, if you want a more well-rounded camera with an option to capture wide angle and macro shots, along with great low-light photos as well as video, then the S10 Lite is the right choice. Finally, it's time to compare prices. The iPhone SE 2020 is one of the cheapest new iPhones that we can get our hands on. But at 42,500, it's just 500 rupees cheaper than the S10 Lite. So unless the smaller form factor is really important to you, the Samsung is the better deal in my opinion. Of course here, especially in India, there's another factor at play. And that's the fact that you can flaunt an Apple more than a Samsung. Well, if you do choose to go the SE 2020 route, be prepared to deal with really bad battery life. As for the S10 Lite, well, it's a pretty well-rounded device, and in my honest opinion, it should be the better choice for most people. Well, that's about it for my thoughts. Let us know if you agree or disagree down in the comments below. Also, which one of these tier 1 brands would you want to pick up? The iPhone SE 2020 from Apple or the Samsung Galaxy S10 Lite? Again, let us know via the comments. That's about it for this video. If you did end up liking it, then please hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications by hitting that bell icon. Thanks a lot for watching till the end, guys. Have a good one. Cheers.